people, especially in our industry, are so tight knit that they tend to jump on to bandwagon ideas, bandwagon trends, which I actually call fads, short-term things that they believe will give them immediate success, tons of money, perfect, perfect autonomy in their lives. However, when they jump on these bandwagon things, a lot of times those messages are put out there and there's not enough detail around it to actually help the people implement those things if they're a good fit.
Hello and welcome to the Elevate podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Nowakowski. I'm a salon owner, educator, mindset, and leadership coach that helps salon owners go from overwhelmed and burnt out to motivated and empowered. It is my mission to help you systemize your business, generate more profit, and create a career that you love. Join us every week to learn about the small shifts you can make to elevate your business regarding mindset, marketing, social media, business systems, and so much more. Let's start by just taking a moment to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are and what you do.
Well, my name is Rob Hinds. I'm a consultant and a coach, mostly for the beauty industry. However, I focus on small businesses in all industries. I do everything from consulting services, coaching. I do transformational workshops and programs for communication, emotional intelligence, all the non-technical skills that normally aren't taught within, especially the beauty industry.
I love that so much. The reason why we become coaches, teachers, leaders is usually there are problems that need to be solved in certain areas, and we usually have the solution. So you said you work closely with a lot of people in the beauty industry. What would you say the number one common problem you see that is corrected by what you offer, and how does this one problem usually hold salons back?
One of the top things, there of course are a list, Patricia, you know this very well. One of the top things that I see is people, especially in our industry, are so tight knit that they tend to jump on to bandwagon ideas, bandwagon trends, which I actually call fads, short-term things that they believe will give them immediate success, tons of money, perfect autonomy in their lives. However, when they jump on these bandwagon things, a lot of times those messages are put out there and there's not enough detail around it to actually help the people implement those things if they're a good fit. So a lot of times we see something multiple times and we think, oh, this must be very successful. It'll probably work for me. And many times once we start to dig a little bit deeper, and you know this in your coaching background as well, once you start to dig deeper, a lot of times those things may not be a fit for that person or that company, at least for that time frame.
Yeah, I think this was one of the reasons why I decided to make a shift, was because there is no one size fits all that is good for everybody's business. And there really is a lot of research and a lot of information needs to be gathered before you can actually make these changes in your business. You can't just take a risk and do this on a whim. And I think it's so important to also find things that are going to align with you and align with what you're doing in your business. I don't think the reason why people open their salons is because they want to be like everybody else. So then why are we doing the exact same things that everyone else is doing? It's just kind of like an oxymoron.
It's a little bit of a crazy thing, right? We get into this industry. We love we love what's supposed to be the creativity around it, the uniqueness. However, it always seems that everybody's looking around to see what everybody else is doing, and they do something either exactly alike or something similar enough to where they could claim it's unique, but it's really just a veer off of something that's already currently being done.
Yeah, I think too, we can't duplicate somebody else's magic. Like magic has to come with what you create for yourself. And I think a lot of people are so stuck on what they see on social media, and they think that everyone is living in this blissful business when in reality, people are just showing their highlight reel. So you may think that something is successful or working for somebody else, but you're not seeing what is happening behind the scenes or the day to day. So,
well, one of the things we see out there a lot is salon owners or even independent hairdressers, providers, they always put out their revenue. For somebody with a business background, I'm more interested in profitability,
yes.
sustainability, and we very, very rarely see people bragging or talking about their profitability. And we still know in the single digit percentages that the amount of salon professionals that are actually profitable, truly profitable, are still in the single digit percentages. But we see all these big things.
Wondering how I keep my business systemized? It's all thanks to Kajabi. Kajabi is a versatile platform that allows me to keep everything in one place, like my website, courses, forms, email marketing, my podcast, and so much more. It's easily mine and my team's favorite software for salon owners. To try Kajabi for yourself for 30 days, visit the link in the show notes.
Yeah. And I think just in this era and generation, because of social media, because of the instant gratification, I don't think stylists realize that to be a 6-figure stylist, you have to generate $200,000 of revenue. And that's if you rent or if you work in a commission salon. It's the same either way, because if you're renting, you still have expenses, overhead, products. You're still going to make about the same if you work in a commission salon. You just are. If you do it right, maybe you can make a little bit more money as a rental. But if you are like claiming everything and doing everything legally, claiming your cash, I mean, it's very close. So in order to do that, you have to be generating at least $100 an hour, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. That's just what you have to generate in revenue. And you can't just start doing that right out of school. You can't do that. Like there are steps. There's a process that you have to go through with your business. You have to build, grow, and scale. And I think people just want to automatically go to scale, and they want to cut all of the hard work that really goes into that. And you can't skip steps. So what are some steps that you really encourage stylists to really focus on, and even salon owners, to get them closer to that 6-figure mark, even though that can take a very, very long time?
Yeah, well, really, a lot of times it seems that we need to go back to the basics. We need to go back to things like core values and true culture. Whether you're independent, whether you work on your own, or whether you're a salon owner with employees, no matter what business model it is, you have to be very clear on who you are, what you stand for, what you're looking to do, what you're looking to achieve. And that foundation really has to be well structured before you can get to any of those other points. And then once you build that, we can now start talking about things like budgeting. We now start talking about partnerships and things that support your values. And everything revolves around that. If we're unclear on the basic fundamentals, everything else will eventually fall apart at some point.
Yeah. And I work on this with my students. This is usually we work on some leadership things first, but then we go right into core values, vision, and mission, because it is the foundation. And those things, they're not fluffy things. Like those things should really drive your business. I tell my students all the time that your core values should be one of the main decision makers in your business. If your core value as a leader is to have integrity and to keep your word, then when you're making a decision based on something that you've told your stylist, you have the choice to not go with your word or go with your word. Your core value is integrity. So that should be the decision that you make. And it's the same thing with the way that we do things in our salon and in our culture, hiring people and utilizing those core values to ask really deep interview questions, hire those people that align with those same core values, hire people that have the same vision and mission as you. If you have somebody who, for example, and you can, I'm sure, share some examples as well from people that you've worked with, But if you have somebody that, if your mission is to help 1 million people regain their confidence through hair extensions, and you have somebody who is interested in making people happy with vivid colors, like obviously that's not going to be someone that aligns with your brand, right? So being okay with that too. I think there's been so much chatter about not having a strong, clear brand and hiring people to that brand. So I think that's something that we have to get back to, because that's when things get confusing inside of your business and with your culture.
Those are the fundamentals. Mm-hmm. Again, a strong foundation, you could build strong structure upon the foundation. You mentioned the word scale, and we hear that a lot. Especially in our industry now, we hear scale, scale, scale. And really, people don't have their lives, either business or personal, together or organized enough to even think about scale.
I don't even think people know what scale is. They don't know what scaling is. Yes. Please share your definition of what scaling is. I think a lot of people don't understand what building, what growing, and what scaling, the definition of that is.
When we look at it in simplistic terms, we have something that we built a foundation. We've tried and failed and tested and did all the things, made all the mistakes. And what we found was a successful formula. Now, when we talk about things like scale, the idea is taking a successful formula, not that it needs to be 100%, but it needs to be pretty close. We take a successful formula and we expand and build on that, whether we add or whether we multiply. We want to take that successful business model or successful piece or successful brand, and then we want to build on that. You can't scale unless you have those things come first. The trials and errors, the success and failures, profit, no profit, loss of employees, whatever that looks like. If you don't have a solid model to go forward, scale is the idea of multiplication, and even on the lower end, addition. But that foundation needs to be there.
Yeah, it's like wanting to have the penthouse, but not wanting to dig the foundation or the center building. Doesn't work. It's not easy unless you're like a celebrity stylist, I feel like, then, but you've also got to work your way there for sure. I think scaling is important because scaling is essentially growing your revenue and your profit without adding more expenses. I think that's another thing that we can touch base on too. It's really making sure that you're maximizing the things that you've already created in your business. That's how I like to explain it.
That's a good point. Think about where the majority of the conversations you and I have with people, whether it's our clients or whether it's people out in the industry, a lot of the talk is around one side of it. Mm-hmm. It's around our pricing, our revenue, the money we want to make, all those other things. If you don't have a well-balanced budget,
yeah,
you have to increase your sales massively in order to cover for that unbalanced budget. But budget's boring. It's not sexy. Mm-hmm. It's not anything that anybody has such an interest that they're like, oh my God, I really want to talk about budget because that's so exciting.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's massively necessary. And you've been in the industry for quite some time. And we've seen over the years, no matter how good the salons are producing in revenue and the stylists are rocking and rolling, if that budget's out of whack, and a lot of times it came from higher commissions and not being able to afford certain things that you're doing on a regular basis, which drives everything, it drives that margin down. And there's already tiny margins in our industry.
Mm-hmm. There really are.
Whether and you were right from the beginning, whether you're an independent or you're a salon owner that is a leader of people, those margins are extremely thin. So that budgeting piece is something we probably should have more real conversations and development around.
So when you talk about budgeting, what are some recommendations that people, I know obviously working with you is probably the best way to go, because you have worked with so many different people and you really do have it down to a science. I'm absolutely positive about that. But for somebody who is just terrified to look at their money, really doesn't know where to start with a budget, what do you recommend for them? Like, where's like the first 3 steps that they can take to really start to get that going?
That's a great question. If somebody's just now wanting to dip their toe into it, you want to look at your break even point. So you want to look at your rent, your debt, and you want to there's calculations around all those things. There's formulas for all of this, but really you want to see, okay, to break even with my facility, doing everything that I want to do at the beginning, I need to know what that break even, then break profit, then break extreme profit piece looks like. That would be step number 1. Number 2 would be look at all the expenses, both direct and indirect, and see what you're spending your money on, where that money's going, and at what rate. Mm-hmm. So those would really be the first 2 steps to just dip your toe into budgeting.
Yeah, I think everyone should know what their break-even number is. What does each station cost you per hour? So you can even look at that for your pricing, because you know that if you have a stylist working on your station, they automatically get whatever the percentage is that you're giving them. And then you have to look at your costs for your processing fees. That can be up to 3%. And then, for example, like I know my stations cost me $7 an hour per station. So I have to look at that too. So those are all things that are so important when you're setting your prices and setting your commission rate. I think there's like a lot of bad advice being given on the internet. And I think that a lot of people and even stylists need to understand that, salon owners really are giving you the best that they can, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of salon owners aren't making a profit. They're not wildly successful with the financial area of their business. So, really looking at that and understanding that someone isn't really taking half of your money. It's very expensive to run a salon. And it's expensive to have a rental situation too. And I think they understand that more when they actually do it. So, really looking at your finances, I think, is really important. And it's something that a lot of salon owners don't even do before they sign their lease. And I think that's something else they have to consider.
For sure. When I have people approach me, one of the things they say is, well, I want to be a commission salon, or I want to be a hybrid, or I want to be a rental. And a lot of my questioning revolves around why. Mm-hmm. And then whatever that subject matter is, why do you think you want to be a commission salon? And just not knowing the answers to those basic questions, well, and it always comes down to, well, what I see out there is, or there's this salon in my area that seems like they're really killing it, and they know absolutely no facts about it. Patricia, honestly, one of the biggest detriments we have in the industry is that we just blindly follow poor tradition. Mm-hmm. Poor business practices, poor leadership skills, and we just continue to follow it because it's all we know.
Yeah.
Which until the last few years, it was fairly understandable. But now that we have information coming our way 24/7, you mentioned the word research earlier. That's the key. Do some homework, do some research. Find out what the facts are before you jump into something or think, I'm going to build this big, beautiful place. I'm absolutely going to kill it. I've got all my colors picked out. I've got my logo made, and no business plan, no pre-budgeting, no idea of what that looks like. And they think, well, I know enough about the industry that I'm just gonna pull this off. And I'm sure you get this as well.
Well, I did that. So I know that's when I first opened. I was like, when I first opened, my rent was, $1,200. So I was like, I could totally afford that. Not thinking about all of the other expenses that go into it. I was just thinking like, it's only $1,200. I can afford that. And again, like I had a vision of what the space was going to look like, but I had no idea how to run a business.
And honestly, we go to where we're comfortable. We go to where we're strong. As a quote unquote creative industry, we go to the things that bring us joy, that make us happy, that are simple, that are easy. When you want to have your own business, whether it's independent or collective,
Mm-hmm.
there are things that you're going to have to do that you don't like, and you may never like, but you at least need to know about them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, a lot of people don't realize like how difficult it is to handle people. It's not easy. It's not easy.
I have two specialties in my business: people and processes.
Mm-hmm.
Research. I do the research. I'm a massive psychology nerd. That's my specialty, communication, all those things. And that's actually what I'm sharing with the industry and the people within it more and more are those pieces. You're a big scholar on things like emotional intelligence. As we move along, we become more digital, a little more disconnected, like face to face personally. Those skills, those communication skills, those people skills, they don't come very easily. And the older we get, the harder those skills actually become to embrace.
That was one thing that I really had to work on for myself, was not letting my feelings run my business. And I think as a leader, and as a salon owner, you have to understand that a lot of people are running their lives on their feelings. And as a salon owner, you have to remove the feelings from your day to day and show up for your team and be strong and not scream at somebody when they do something wrong, or yell at somebody, or have the urge to do something that could create a potential toxic situation. Like, there's so many things that you have to think about as a leader, even being able to delegate properly and removing the guilt or the uncomfortableness when it comes to asking somebody to do something in your business. Mm-hmm. These are all things that people struggle with. So knowing how to manage your feelings and remove them from certain situations is so imperative. And I think too, you're right. So many people are keyboard warriors. It's so easy to, say how you feel on the internet, or, share things on the internet. But when it comes to being face to face to people, I think a lot of people don't even know how to handle themselves.
No. Well, yeah. And that's also where mislabeling comes in, especially in the beauty industry. But I've even seen in some of the other industries that I work in, there are some similarities. However, the beauty industry, the misconception of things, the myths around things, you and I are referring to two of the basic pillars of emotional intelligence: awareness and regulation in the self. Yeah. And, even the people that may have good self-awareness and recognize, they're still not regulating it. They're still exploding on people, and they're still having those moments to where it's out of control.
I think self-awareness and self-regulation it's definitely non-negotiable. If you cannot do those two things, then you should not open a salon yet. I think trust is important too. Those two things are the areas where you really solidify trust with your team. And I think people assume that those things come naturally and you're born with them, but they're things that you have to work on actively every day. It's not something that just happens overnight. A
lot of people think it's about the destination. Most things are about the journey. It's a continuous journey. Trust is a great point to bring up, Patricia. It's very odd to me that people realize that I know these things aren't good, but I still see everybody else doing it, so it still must be okay. It's really baffling to me. How do you feel about that?
I feel like it's easy to follow the herd, and it's really hard to create your own path. Yeah. And I think a lot of people like to do easy things, and a lot of people don't like to do the hard things or be the people to take the first step, because you get left behind sometimes and it's lonely.
Well, one of the many things that I work on with my clients, but especially right out of the gate, I get them to think. People thinking on their own has really
Critical
gone to the
thinking.
wayside.
Mhm.
It's been put far beyond the back burner. Thinking for yourself and thinking, is this the right thing to do?
I think that starts at the school level. I think they've really shifted the way that they teach our kids. And I think critical thinking and I think independent thinking is something that isn't really nurtured in school right now. And I don't think it's nurtured in society.
Yes, listen to everything your teacher says. Yes, believe everything you read. Yes, follow the rules. Yes, follow the instructions.
Especially in what we do every day, like you have to critically think because situations happen all the time behind the chair. Like things get messed up. People have things on your hair that you don't know about. Formulas get, configured wrong. All these things happen. And you have to use your mind to figure out how to create the solution to the problem that you're experiencing. And I think that's what business is just in general. You're solving problems for people. You have to have that thinking mentality and that the ability to critically think in order to create the solutions for the people that are coming to you and sitting in your chair or even coming to you and working for you in your business. I mean, it's just all in all, it's something that's imperative to growth and to business growth and personal growth.
This is your podcast, but I have a question for you. With your current transition, what are some of the enlightening things that you've either learned or relearned or reintroduced yourself to that maybe you did or knew a while back or something brand new that came to you that you're like, okay, now I'm ready for this part of my journey?
So for me, I'm very fortunate. I'm a salon owner who does take home 6 figures and I do not work behind the chair. So that is definitely something that I have mastered and I've worked really hard at. A lot of salon owners are stuck behind the chair and they're a slave to their business. They really are. They're a slave to their clients, they're a slave to their business, and they're a slave to their team. And with all of the coaching, education, I mean, I spent $40,000 last year alone on personal education. I really do invest in myself because I know the importance and the growth that comes and the return on investment when you really do take time to invest in yourself. For me, when I was coaching with the company that I was coaching with, I never went along with the things that they pushed people to do because I had tested them in my business and I saw which ones worked and which didn't. I just did. I always test things before I recommend anything to anybody else. And I really see what effects they create and it's a ripple effect, right? And how that affects the business. So I think where I've shifted is now I have the ability to really use my voice, where before I couldn't use my voice because I was restricted in what I was essentially allowed to say and what not to say. So the regaining of my voice is very powerful. And I'm very excited about that. But I'm also excited to continue to really find what's effective for each individual's business, what aligns with their core values, their mission, their vision, what aligns with their 10-year goal. I think a lot of people get stuck in tunnel vision and they only get stuck in the day-to-day, but they really don't think about what the end goal is that they have for themselves. Where do you want to be in 10 years? Do you want to be standing behind the chair, working 40 hours on clients when you're 55? Probably not. So what is the plan that you need to take in order to get there? What kind of profit and revenue do you need to create? How many team members do you need to have? Do you need to downsize? Do you need maybe not to do a rental salon because it's not going to get you to that end goal? Is renting out your stations going to be enough profit for you to financially live off of without having to work behind the chair? These are all things that people need to really, really consider before even creating their business or changing anything in their business. What's the financial impact that this is going to have on your business? What's the financial impact this is going to have on your team? Because when you fuck with your team, you also mess with their lives, but you also mess with your livelihood because they will leave. So these are all the things that you really have to think. You can't just make a rash decision or make an instant decision based on something that somebody tells you because it sounds good.
I lhad that. And really, when I started Raise Your Lid Consulting, my business in October of 2020, I had opportunities and decisions. Do I go work for other companies still? Whether it's manufacturers, consulting companies. Do I do that? And kind of like with you, you have to stay within that realm, that era. There are certain conversations you can have, certain you can't. There are things you can and can't do, can and can't say. I will tell you this, Patricia. Now that you're starting on this part of your journey, I will tell you, you will absolutely love it. And you'll never be more relaxed in your life when all you need to do is listen to people's needs. And you could go through any door that you want to in order to benefit them. Yeah. Instead of going through a specific tunnel to benefit them and say, well, we could fit this in and make this work for you. And even when we might know in our heart of hearts that it might not be the best. We've all done that when we worked for brands or manufacturers or anything like that. It's kind of the company Kool-Aid. The nice thing about where I'm at right now and the way I'm doing it, and I'm saying this partially to encourage you and inspire you, but whether it does or not, that's fine. Maybe your listeners will understand this. Being able to suit something to somebody's specific needs, there's nothing like it.
Right.
There's nothing like it. All business models can be successful. There's no model that's an automatic detriment, or no piece that's an automatic detriment. It's all in how you put it together based on the values and all the foundational things, and it has to make sense. But there's massive opportunity out there to benefit people, and the fact that you get to do it now completely open-mindedly, or mostly open-mindedly, because you still own your own salon and you have your suites and stuff like that, but that's part of your testing method also. I love it.
I don't think I would be able to do the coaching aspect without being a salon owner and having salon suites. I couldn't, because I like to coach from a place of experience. And I always, like I said, I like to test things first in my own business before I even suggest things to other people. Shifting and breaking through their mindset, because really that's the only thing that holds people back is what's in here. And that's their only limitation. That's it.
Yeah. It's the top thing. Mm-hmm. The way we talk to ourselves, the words we use, and those are, I know you mentioned at the beginning some of the programs that I do. I do a program on elevated verbiage.
And I think that's what salons need. Salons don't need another technical class. They need somebody to come in and break through the mindset of the people that work for them.
Yes.
Because it's all fear. They're afraid to put themselves out there, afraid to mess up, afraid to try something new. It's a lot of getting in their own head, telling themselves stories. These are all things that hold people back, their confidence, the inability to truly, take a risk, or to, have the desire, create the desire for themselves. That's something else that's really hard.
It is. And again, much like learning the numbers and the budgets, it's not sexy.
No,
it's not. It's very uncomfortable to talk about boundaries and mindset. It's very unsettling. I'd rather go to a balayage class because it's fun. I'm going to see my people there. We're going to play in hair. We're going to do all those things. And that's the other thing too. When we talk about things like education, we're talking about 95 to 98% technical education, whereas actually, we need that massively shifted to what I call the non-technical skills.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
You could do beautiful hair, you could do beautiful nails, you could do beautiful skin repair. If you can't deal with tough consumers, tough teammates,
feedback,
have an honest conversation, with my leader, those skills are a dime a dozen.
And I think too, like, speaking of like difficult conversations, like that again is one of those missing pieces inside of great leadership, and, inside of just human behavior in general. There are so many people who just can't say how they feel or what they need, or something that is like, I don't want to say inappropriate, but like they can't communicate that. And then it turns into, I just literally went through a whole ordeal with, the whole situation could have been avoided with the ability to have difficult conversations and the ability to even accept difficult conversations, because it's two ways, right? We have to be able to speak our truth, and we have to be able to hear somebody else's truth, right? Without creating a reactive response, and truly hearing what the person has to say and not letting our response affect the relationship. And I think that's what pushes a lot of people into rental or into these rental situations, is because they either can't accept the difficult conversation, or they can't have difficult conversations. And it's so simple. Why do you think people have such a hard time having difficult conversations? I deal with it myself as a leader. Like my team, I'm like, why didn't they just ask me that? Or why didn't they say something? And it's something is like they needed a color ordered, but they were afraid to ask. Like, it's just silly things, What do you think the reasoning is behind that?
Skill. Having difficult conversations is actually a skill. Having clear, direct, kind communication, that's a skill. And a big part of that skill is the self-regulation part of emotional intelligence. If those things aren't in tow, or at least becoming better, those are tough skills to have. I will tell you this, on the daily, Patricia, on the daily, talking with clients, going through certain things, whether it's processes or people. I'm having this meeting, I'm having this talk with this person. The number one question that I get across the board is, okay, how do I say that? And it's a very valid question, because at the end of the day, if you're not good with self-regulation, you're going to pop off, and something's definitely not going to go right.
Right.
However, the other part of that is what I call cowardice. People run from it and they avoid it. I should say avoidance, but the acts around it are cowardice, like ghosting people. I'm just not going to respond to that bad review.
Or you get blocked.
That's terrible. That's terrible human interaction.
Yeah.
Those are true acts of cowardice.
Right.
So either running from it, there's the whole fight, flight, and freeze, right?
Yeah.
We talk about freeze the least, freeze is actually one of the most active pieces in those three components.
I mean, and that's, I don't think people realize how like freeze really can like take over a majority of your day. Doom scrolling, Netflix binging, like these are all things that usually come from the reactive response of freeze.
Yeah. And
ghosting, blocking.
Again, it's the things that are least talked about. They're not sexy, they're not fun, they're not exciting. They're only inspiring once you start to get good at it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I think reactivity is, it's again, you said it's a small portion, but it's also something that people need to be more aware about, because then they won't live their life on autopilot.
For sure.
So cool. I love that. So tell me more about some of the things that you offer and what people can expect when they contact you, and how you can help their businesses with your programs and the things that you do.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I have the coaching and consulting part of my business, where I work on people, I work on the processes. And then I have my programs and speaking engagements, where I participate in either panel discussions, Q&A sessions, like team meetings, stuff like that. And then I have my progressive development programs, which are what we call in the industry classes. They're more programs that all build on each other, and they cultivate and help people comfortably grow the skills that they need in order to be better human beings. Leadership training is one of the things that I do most. I'm actually on the John Maxwell leadership team.
Awesome.
And, I've been part of that for a long time, and still, I have coaches and mentors and all those other resources available to me. And so within the programs, those are the things that I focus on. And for the beauty industry, I translate those skills into, okay, now how do we do this as a salon owner? How do we implement this behind the chair or in the treatment room? And that translation has really helped a lot of salon professionals make that jump from, oh my God, we're talking about critical thinking, to, okay, in this situation behind the chair, what would be some of those pieces within critical thinking that we could implement, clearly, directly, kindly, and make them feel a little more comfortable about trying that skill.
I think that's another thing too that I like about what you're saying is a lot of people will, take these classes or learn these things, but they don't actually apply them or know how to apply them. And I think the ability to actually retain the information and then apply them is where the power and where that growth really happens too.
Is it okay if I say something that might freak out you and your listeners, or at least your listeners?
Oh, I don't care.
But it'll be relevant.
Yeah, for sure.
So here's what I say. Fuck education. Education is what we see in the schools. You go somewhere, you learn something, you memorize it, and then you go home, and most of the time you do nothing with it. I prefer professional or progressive development, because development is an ongoing piece. It needs to be practiced. It needs to be cultivated, and it needs to be repeated. It's kind of like you take on a brand new color line and you have them come in once, and then maybe somebody comes in and helps you a little bit, but there's really no continued support. And then it's not another year until you get another color class. And, people struggle with that, and those things go away quickly. When it's continually reintroduced and it's part of progression, that's when people gravitate. They build confidence around implementation, and they can move forward a little bit better. Even if they try one piece and they try that consistently, progress is progress. A step forward is a step forward. Yeah. Whether it's a tiny little step or a huge leap, a step forward is a step forward. But when we see, like, okay, in 6 months you're going to make $100,000, or you're going to build 10 salon locations in 3 years, and you're going to do all this, and you're going to be a celebrity hairdresser. But you know what? Take that first step. How about getting your retention up to 85-90%? Let's start there.
Right.
Let's start with wonderful human connection, and then build on that. And let's look at the revenue and the things we're doing well, and let's build on that. And instead of thinking like, oh my God, I didn't make my numbers this month. It's terrible. I'm falling down. No, but if we saw progress in a couple areas, let's recognize that, build on it, and let's talk about the other stuff.
I think the leaders need to hear that. I think the leaders need to hear that.
Patricia, for all the leadership trainings that I do, the word patience comes out of my mouth probably more than anything.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing too. I think salon owners are usually very highly motivated and driven hairstylists, right? They're very motivated. They're very driven. A lot of them have, created, for example, Brooke, she created success in a very short period of time because she's very driven. She's very motivated. She's very focused. She knows exactly what she wants. She worked for me. I'm not sure if you know that, but she worked for me. And when I hired her, I was like, she's not going to be here for very long, because you can see the motivation, drive, and that I don't want to say personality, because it's not, it's a special type of person. Right. Mm-hmm. And I think salon owners assume that every single person is going to be like them, and they're going to have those special traits, and they don't. So they don't have patience, and they don't have understanding, because they assume that everyone can do it because they did. And that's not the case. It doesn't work like that.
The other contributor to lack of patience is look at where we are. And one of the things I love the most about you is that you love automation and systems and stuff like that. Yeah. You and I are very probably equally nerdy in that realm, which I think is a cool thing. But here's the thing. We have so much things happening around us, and they all happen quickly. Patience goes away. If you click to go on a website and it takes 3 seconds, you're already bitching about it, right? You're already, oh my God, I can't believe this 3 seconds is like the end of my world. But that's also where the diminish in patience continues, and it leaks over into our behavior.
Yeah.
We become impatient with people. I know you have 2 little ones, and as you go through each segment of their lives and each journey, I have an 18-year-old.
I'm sure the 18-year-old is teaching you patience too.
It's the journey's always there, and the challenges are always there. That's never diminished or gone away. It's just different. So that's the thing with patience, especially with leaders, that we have to realize. A lot of the things when I talk to leaders about what they do is going from I, me thinking to they, them thinking. When a leader tells me, well, I would have done it this way, or I do it like this, or I've always done it like this, that's about them. Mm-hmm. Leadership is 100% about other people. 100%.
Yeah.
Not 99, 100% about others for true leadership. And those are some of the things where that patience, you need to do it like me. You need to do it the way I did it. I was successful. So, you need to listen to me. And if the basic skills and the foundation are missing, along with the EQ, it makes it tough.
It's been a wild ride, I'm sure, for you as well. It has. Okay. So tell people where they can find you. How do they get in contact with you? How do they set up, different things? I'm assuming you do Zoom and in person, all the things. So
I do virtual and in-person programs. My consulting and coaching stuff and my program stuff can be virtual or in person. The easiest place to find me is on Instagram at rob.raiseyourlidconsulting. There's a link in my bio. You can find out everything about me, all my information, my core values, my commitment to my clients, testimonials, my brochure, my service brochure. And then within my Instagram feed, you can see how I do things. I'm very transparent about how I do things. From me, you're going to get clear, direct, kind communication, but you're also going to get challenged in a way that most people haven't been challenged before, but it's always in their best interest, always.
Yeah. I feel like that's important. That's the key component, one of the key components, of course.
Yeah.
Because without challenge or that pain point, then how do you really truly make a transformation?
Well, and digging deep with people is something that's not common. Most people like to stay on the surface. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's a general answer to your problems, or here's a general solution. It's really when you start to dig deep with people, you find out the real deal. But that also takes patience, and it takes a lot of skill.
It does. I really enjoyed today's conversation. So thank you so much for taking the time today.
It's always my pleasure.
Thanks for tuning into the Elevate podcast. If you loved this episode, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. The Elevate podcast is hosted by me, Patricia Nowakowski, and produced by Opulent Beauty Pro. To receive my free business guides, visit opulentbeautypro.com/free or click the link in the show notes. You can find me on Instagram at opulentbeautypro or at Patricia_Nowakowski_OBS. If you love this show, please consider subscribing. See you next week.